Hey guys, Prepare Mentality here. I am here with James from PBN Podcast, and I saw his content on Instagram, and he has some great content about preparedness, about current events, and things that we should look out for, ordinary people in this crazy time of events. And I just want to welcome him on Preparedness Talk. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on and thanks for doing what you do. So important right now.
For sure, for sure. I wanted to get this started just to summarize how you got into the preparedness community, what major event got you thinking, what got the gears turning to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned the angle of sort of ordinary people because I'm one of those guys who comes to preparedness with no real cool accolades whatsoever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I was basically just a sh- struggling chef, new father, husband, rock star wannabe type guy coming out of college and having my first son, we got hit by a hurricane called Irene down here in Virginia, and there's no, I don't even have a cool story. Like, there's no
Right.
dramatic story. Trees came down, we lost power, but I had sort of an aha moment of like, I am just failing so hard right now as dad and husband
Mhm.
because we were just regular people at the time. We would go to the market for the week when the
Yeah.
week of food was gone, you go to the market,
Right.
and for I don't know, maybe a day we were trapped in the neighborhood because we're in kind of a cul-de-sac. Tree came across the road, and like I said, there were no real issues other than, I mean, I guess from my wife's standpoint, there could have been some issues. My son was like a month and a day old.
Okay.
So I'm
Wow.
sure she wasn't like, this is the best conditions.
Right. Yeah.
But she's a hockey player, hard ass. She was way more built for what we do now than I was, trust me. I'm running from fights my whole life. Like, oh my God, this guy's gonna kick my ass.
Yeah.
All of that led to that sort of culminating failure. And from there, it was like, put the big boy underwear on. It's time to become a man.
Hmm.
And, I had always grown up in sort of like the sci-fi comic book. I was a dork, nerd, loved those War of the Worlds movies, all that kind of stuff. So that post-apocalyptic mentality was in there, but it was just not something that I ever really thought about in real life.
Hmm.
And then, those wires they started to touch in that moment. And that was it, man. That was all she wrote. That was how old is Carter now? He's up in bed. He'll be 13 in August. So that was
Wow.
13 years ago.
Wow.
And I got super lucky, man. I ran into a guy. Well, the way I started getting into the prepping thing was through a podcast network. It was Prepper Podcast Radio Network. And
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't even think it exists anymore.
Right.
Um, actually, I think it does. I think my friend D Cooper runs it now, and it's called the Posh Radio Network. If anybody wants to check that out, that's another opportunity. I don't have no idea what shows they do if it's even operational anymore.
Mm.
She runs the Thrivalist Fair too out there in Colorado. That's a really good prepper event. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah.
I was listening to that podcast because I could do stuff. The reason I like podcasts, you can do stuff around the house, at work, and listen, and I like that. I'm a multitasker.
Yeah.
And they started running these commercials like, do you want to host a show?
Mm.
And I was an idiot. I mean, I couldn't, I had no business hosting a show. Even on some weird, obscure prepper network, I just had very little information. I had
Yeah.
fished all my life. That was about my strongest suit, and maybe like cooking and ingredients, that kind of stuff. And I just started doing it, man. I started doing it and I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing and we'll figure this thing out together.
Hmm.
And I had no idea it would lead to like a career and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it just did. Started attending different events, started broadcasting on another podcast network of preppers back in like, maybe 2012, I think it was.
Hmm.
And just, how it is. I'm sure
Oh yeah.
I just grinded. I was just consistent. I never missed a show.
Yeah.
10 people were listening. I didn't care. I never missed a show.
You got to go with it, man.
Yeah, and it all culminated in where we're at now, the Prepper
Wow.
Broadcasting Network, our great following and what we do, week to week. So,
Wow.
um
Now that's
yeah,
good.
it's been a fun journey, man, no doubt about it. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
You mentioned, being a man and especially in this climate, what is it to be a man? What defines becoming a man? I see a lot of our younger men, generations after us, that it's kind of up in the air what it is to be a man and how to take care of a family and responsibilities that come with, your age and the title of being a father. I'm in
Yeah.
my beginning stages of being a father. My
Oh,
son's
congratulations,
Thank you.
man.
My son's 1 years old now. So,
Oh God, I'm so
yeah,
jealous,
yeah. I'm
dude.
in I'm in the toddler phase, man.
I'm
So
jealous.
so
My
the
kids are
the
growing up too fast. It's
right.
so sad.
So yeah, it's different having a child now because now I think of my preparedness not just for myself but for my family. And what
Yeah.
am
Oh
I
yeah.
giving
Oh,
him?
you're leveling up, man.
Oh yeah,
That's what's
you have
happening
to.
right now.
You
You're
have to.
leveling up.
You have to.
Yeah.
So it's like, what
You
am I
watch
giving
Dragon
him?
Ball Z?
I did. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I used to say on my podcast that having kids was like. It's
Oh,
like
there
you
you
go
go.
Super Saiyan when you have kids.
Super Saiyan
Because
God.
yeah, well, maybe just Super Saiyan, but because you have to, you have to go take it to another level. So that's
hmm
great news, man.
hmm
That's great news for sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a different perspective now than just being with myself and my wife. Now we add a child on top of that. And of course, you've seen the craziness out there that's trying to consume our generations and our young boys.
it's a
You know,
battle.
it's a real battle. It's a big
Hmm.
battle. And in my preparedness, it's almost like you're creating new values, a new structure, a new way of life, um, and introducing that all over again. The survival mechanism in our brains to actually say, hey, these are some of the things we need to be aware of. These are the dangers. These are the emergencies that could happen potentially. What are we going to do about them? Are we going to stand by and let it go by the wayside, or are we going to be active in the event? Uh, so what are your thoughts now on the generations after us and boys becoming men and really helping them to have a clear sight and vision of what it is to be a man?
Yeah. Uh, you know, I'm very lucky to be in a position where in this day and age, I took a road and wound up in a place where my relationship and my wife, we've been together a long time, dude. We met when I was like 17 years old.
Same,
And she was just that one, and I knew she was that one, and I said,
right?
you may not run into another one like this, so you better
Yeah.
hunker down. But we went into that, and what I'm going to say is just my experience, and it goes completely against the grain of like what most cool people on YouTube say. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Um, we really did hit the relationship game and have for 20 years
mm,
essentially as equals. You know what I mean? I
mm.
know it's not a popular thing. We're supposed to take the women's shoes off, throw them in the kitchen. Women are happier at home, whatever.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. The man, whatever. You've heard it all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason I bring all this up is because if somebody sat me down when I was 17, when I first met her, and said, "You have to X, Y, and Z to be a man,"
Yeah.
I'd never be here. I'd never
Right.
be in this position. I'd never have lived a life. We probably wouldn't even have stayed together because
Mm,
she was a headstrong, independent woman. She drove from Virginia to Pennsylvania to go to school. She played ice
wow.
hockey. She was, she does still don't know how to cook.
Right. Right.
I was a chef though, so the circumstance is different,
Mm-hmm.
and the rigors that I see on the internet right now of I think it's just as bad to emasculate men, which happened over my whole life growing up, was the emasculation of men in America.
Mm,
But I think what's just as bad is then cornering them and saying, dude, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, you're not a man.
right.
So step it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Life is way cooler than that. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And there's way more potential to be a man than to just say, I got to do these three things and that's all I'm allowed to do. And I got to suffer through it and,
Mm-hmm.
be on suicide's doorstep so that I can appease this guy on YouTube who's telling me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like you got to live your life. I mean, well, I think what's important for men to understand is there is a hard stop. Like you will be responsible in the eyes of society for things,
Mm,
whether or not you want to or not. So you have
yeah.
to set up a life where you got people and support systems in place that, when people say, "Is this guy's family okay?" They go, "Yeah, his family's okay. He's doing a good job." You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they're it's like if you run into a kid who's dirty or something like that, you go like, "Damn, what's going on with mom?"
Hmm.
Those things go right to mother. Doesn't matter how woke things get. You always look at a kid who's unkempt and say, "What's going on with mom?"
Yeah.
And there are things like that with dad and things like that with men. And how you get there, I don't think matters.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But you have to understand, someone breaks in the house, there's one guy to handle it. You know what I mean? If
Right.
if you get into something out in the streets, there's one guy to handle it. If the family tanks, mom gets addicted to drugs, that happened in my house,
Mm.
or you know what I mean? Whatever. A kid gets into trouble, heaven forbid loses his life. Everybody's going to look and go, what happened with the leader in that household?
Mhm.
So building a life that gives you, the ability to be adaptable and have fun and chase your dreams and do all that kind of stuff. You still got to make money and pay the bills. And but
Yeah.
that goes to that hard line, right? That
Yeah.
goes to that same hard line of like at the end of the day, there are some things that a man has to do. But
Mhm.
the idea that we tell him like, don't do anything outside of these five things,
Right. Right. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's as
Yeah.
crazy as saying be a girl.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is what
I
I
think
heard
it's
growing up.
I think it's very important that we have flexibility, especially
Oh, yeah.
now as times change. Things are changing constantly. Um, I also think it's important that young men have those examples of what to
Definitely.
look for. The the men who have already done it, been
Yeah.
there, done that, can give influence, give knowledge, wisdom, and kind of just have that as a backup to say, okay, these group of men I admire, they've done they've had a family, good job, good career, um, well off, they've already had that journey. What's my journey going to be? Maybe not
Yeah.
specifically theirs, but for me,
Show
that
them
may look
everything.
different. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So,
gotta show them a lot. That's what I
yep.
think the biggest job of a parent is show
Hmm.
people what's possible. Show your kids what's possible. You know what I
Right.
mean? Obviously, there's the discipline angle and all that kind of stuff, but
Hmm.
show them what's possible. You can do that, you can do this, you can be like, I'm entrepreneur, wife
Hmm.
is corporate, so my kids, they see, like, this is what it takes to be mom, this is what it takes to be dad. They both have to make these kinds of sacrifices, and they both
Yeah.
get these kind of benefits, and it's just important to show them, show
Hmm.
them successes, show them failures, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I always say, my parents had a lot of trouble growing up, and some of it still persists. And I always say, man, I learned more from them than anybody successful. You
Mm.
know, and no, nothing has driven me to do good in life more than my parents and watching them struggle,
Yeah.
because it's just like, cool Maserati, nice, but
Right.
what's really better than that as a motivator is I don't want to be in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
show them the world, man.
When it comes to preparedness, what steps do you take to prepare your family, to make sure your kids or wife are aware of certain situations, scenarios that may happen? What do you
Oh
do
yeah.
for that?
Yeah, I mean, so we over the years we've really, and this is the key, I think, the overall key to preparedness is it has to become lifestyle.
Mm.
It's not like a Wednesday afternoon we talk about prepping. You know, it's lifestyle. The conversations that you have, the way that you live your life day to day. Like we've had chickens running around our house for like probably 9 8 9 years now.
Right.
And though that's one example of how, like, integrate this thing into your life that you can't remove. Like, you can't say, "Oh, I'm not gonna take care of the chickens today. I'm not gonna let them out. Don't
Right.
go get the eggs. Don't feed them. Don't put them away." Because it just doesn't work. It's a lifestyle. And, if you carry a firearm, things like that, everybody knows you carry a firearm that you live with,
Right.
hopefully.
Right. Right.
And again, these daily things that you do, and of course, then my kids are also inundated with, like, it's Monday night, go upstairs and be quiet. I got a show to do. It's Wednesday night, go, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And then, ask questions about what we talked about, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it becomes a matter of lifestyle. My
Hmm.
wife and I have always been attuned, in tune, politically, socially. We're very different people, but I always tell her, we run on the same operating system. There's no doubt
That's
about that.
important.
Yeah. So that means that the lingering conversations that, me and her are up front, I'm driving, she's driving, whatever it is, the kids are in the back doing their thing. They're hearing everything that we're listening to, everything that we're talking about. And it's just, that fortification of things. Now we integrate camping and fishing and those kinds of things into their life also. But that's again, I'm a lifelong fisherman. I like
Right.
to go camping and hiking and those kinds of things. So it's not a list of what I have to do this year to prepare the family. It's just this is our life,
Mm,
So
yeah.
I really recommend people making that big change to a preparedness lifestyle, a homes, even an urban homesteading lifestyle. Like I live on
Yeah.
less than an acre. You can do a lot,
Oh yeah.
and the tighter the space, the more it affects your family. They're always involved in it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's good. I think having that as a reality for most people, I think just living the lifestyle, being it, doing the things, and
that's
having
it.
again that mentality to go with it. And you just wrote a children's book, right?
Oh, yeah,
Have you got
wow,
your children's
thank you
book
so
out?
much for bringing that up,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, The World of Ready. Yeah, The World of Ready was, yeah, there's well, Brock Long was a guy who
Mm,
used to run the FEMA, used to run FEMA, and he
okay.
said something that I thought was so astounding. I used to have it at the intro of our podcast network, total intro, and he said, "We have to create a true culture of preparedness starting at a young age and filtering all the way up." And that was really the inspiration for that. It was
Right.
this idea of like, how do we captivate kids at a
Mm,
young age with a really, I'll send you a book to remind me, a
yeah,
really
for
cool,
sure.
especially since you got a little one,
Yeah.
a really cool magical story for young kids, like this is like a 0 through 8 kind of
Right.
read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and a good story too, like
Right.
not just we're gonna prepare today, some
Yeah. Yeah.
magic, some otherworldly creatures, that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
um, just really get them doing things. The first book culminates in the main character
Mm,
telling the kids to build a go bag and how to do it. And there's a list at the end of exactly what you can use to build one of your own, and it shows the kids in the story doing it and all that kind of stuff.
wow.
So that's kind of the goal. We're
Yeah.
working on our second one. Our second title will be out in August, and that's going to be about getting lost in the woods. How
All
to,
right.
a good system for young kids to understand for how to
Yeah.
deal with that. And we're just going to keep going, man. Keep
Wow.
going, and hopefully it's done well so far. We did get lucky and get featured over on the Blaze, so that helped with
Okay.
book sales for
Nice.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
For sure.
um, yeah,
That's
if you
good stuff.
start young, I can't imagine how prepared you could be.
Oh yeah.
Like my kids, I can't imagine what they're already more prepared than I was when I had them.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Just the things that they understand.
Right.
So there was a lot of potential there for the youth.
Oh, that's good, man. I mean, that's something that's needed. More things for the kids, just to develop them consciously and aware of what's going on around them.
Yeah.
And speaking of what's going on around us, what do you think, or where do you think people can be ready, get their mindset right for the current election that's over our heads all the time, every hour, on the hour,
Yeah.
somebody's talking about this thing, and the events that may lead up to it and the events that may happen afterwards.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, whenever a big thing is on the horizon, I always tell the audience at PBN, are you where you want to be? You know what I mean? Like that's question number one, because that's the biggest and most troubling thing you're going to have to deal with.
Right.
Are you where you want to be? And if you're not where you want to be, then now's the time. We got what, June, July, August, September, October. We got basically 4 months to move.
Hmm.
If you're sitting in Manhattan, if you're
Yeah.
in, if you're in New York City, get
Yeah.
out of there. That's a bad place to be.
Right.
So that's kind of question number one, and that's a big undertaking, and I understand that. But I think people who are in a bad situation and understand the potential threats are going to move if they want to move, and people who aren't. And people might be happy where they're at, But
Hmm.
that's the key question to ask right off the bat.
Right.
The other thing that I think really helps people is giving them some, I call it the base level preparedness, and it's just giving them buckets to fill when they have free time, extra money,
Mm,
or, some other resource that they can dedicate to it.
mm,
And, you know, they're straightforward. It's food, water, security,
right.
first aid, communication, evacuation, and backup power.
Mm,
If you can address those things little by little, a little food, buy a case of water, a
right.
battery bank, IFAC, whatever, little things into those buckets. Just write those buckets down in a notebook somewhere. And when you have some free money or free time, learn about them, or
Mm-hmm.
buy something that'll help you, or train something that'll help you. And before long, you're going to get competent. And those are the main areas. And don't leave out evacuation. There
Right.
was a reason I chose evacuation over bug out when I put that together, and it's because evacuation it's easy if you plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
The bug out is not easy. It's
Yeah.
a monster.
Right.
But evacuation is easy. That's you plan ahead for it. I have a place to go. It's a hotel that we always go to because it floods here, whatever the situation is. Have that dialed in, because then you get out of harm's way fast and it's already planned.
Yeah.
But that's my if you're starting from scratch,
Right.
that's where you want to go, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting because I hear a lot of people talking about I'm a bug out to here or I'm a evacuate to there, but there's no plan after that, right? And so it kind of leaves this what if scenarios, and then you go into all these other areas that have nothing to do with the original plan
Oh
um,
yeah.
that
Yeah,
people started
it's the
with.
bug out is so terrifying. So we used to be on Patreon, and then I think I'm still on, but we don't do anything over there. I don't,
Okay.
it's not a money making avenue. Because in
Right.
2020, I got so petrified of being canceled and my
Ah.
income being canceled
Right.
that we just set up our own private membership, private chat room. We exist on
Yeah.
our own 2 feet, and I did a bug out series
Mm,
for my audience over there. It's at our website, pbmfamily.com, but
okay.
it's a 6-hour undertaking. It took me 6 episodes at an hour apiece to talk about, and this is just, are you gonna bug out all the way to, okay, you've arrived at your bug out location.
Right.
This says nothing of surviving beyond that.
Yeah.
So that took every bit of 6 hours to really sit down and figure out all the things that go into it, the planning, the steps, what can go wrong, all that kind of stuff. And that was a great exercise for me personally. I know my audience got a lot out of it, but it was a great exercise for me personally because it was like, is this viable, dude?
Right.
What I actually want to be doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. Huh. That's really interesting. I mean, because if you think about a bug out scenario, that it has to be really really bad. Unless there's a natural disaster, hurricane, tornado, where ahead of time, and authorities are telling you, "Hey, this is coming." You really don't know if it's coming unless it's already at your doorstep.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things. So
I
yeah,
always say I don't know anyone who's ever bugged out. And I
right,
know a lot of preppers, dude. I know
right,
a lot of people. I go to an event prepper camp every year,
yeah,
meet people from all over the world, see people I haven't seen in a year from all over. 2020 happened, the
mm,
riots happened, all that stuff happened. Nobody bugged out. Nobody
right,
was like, I went to my bug out location and stayed there, and I've been there ever since. There
right,
was a lot of people who I knew people who didn't leave their house for 6 months. That
right.
was kind of impressive.
Wow.
They didn't go into town for 6 months.
Mm,
And, that's a testament to being prepared in and of itself. But I
yeah.
don't know anybody who bugs out,
Wow.
over anything. So the other question is, what does it take? What is it actually going to take? And I discussed that in that, but
Hmm.
what's the real trigger for you for bugging out? Because in most
Right.
cases, you're going to be like, I don't want to leave my house,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
bed, everything.
All your
You can only take
resources.
so much. Yeah, you can only take so. I couldn't take all the food that I have in this house to a bug out location.
No.
But so yeah, it's a thing, and you should have answers for that.
Hmm.
Um, but if you're going to do it, you really kind of need to do it,
Right.
and it's
Right.
it's an undertaking for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot that goes into it, especially, you add family into that, children, if you
Yeah.
have handicapped individuals in your
Oh
family
yeah. Now
that
you
you're
got
taking
real
care of,
struggles.
people with medication, it goes into a lot, and that's a big undertaking, like you said. It's not an easy task at all.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something that can get our gears going and bring awareness to, okay, if you're going to do something like this, please be very, very planned
Yeah.
decisive and tactical about how you do it because you can waste a lot of time and a lot of energy doing something that's not going to benefit you or your family. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
thorough. My one of the hosts over at PBN, close friend of mine, Dave Jones, the NBC guy, he'd be a great
Mm,
guest here also. He's a lifetime nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare specialist with the Army.
okay.
And he always talks about his bug out location being, you know, a mile or two away from his house.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave fundamentally teaches you that in the Army, when we're talking about like dealing with aggressors,
Mm,
in a disaster, whether it be riots, or collapses of society, that kind of stuff. He talks about the concept that, the Army goes into a mission with acceptable casualties.
mm,
And, you know, when I met him, I took a class and he was teaching this class the day that I met him. And there were some groups in there taking the class and he was talking about acceptable casualties.
mm,
And he said, now look around at your group and point at the one who's an acceptable casualty.
mm.
And
Wow.
that fundamentally changed another big part of my preparedness game, which was, the best idea is probably not strap Kevlar on and face every threat with a firearm
Yeah.
because, he just better understood the reality of that. Although I know a lot of preppers who are ex-military and that kind of stuff, and they don't seem to understand the realities of that
Yeah.
as well as Dave did, or at least they don't articulate it as good as he did,
Right. Right. Yeah. It's, I think, like for me, I was in the army for a while. And so I think once you get out of that space and that conditioning of the body and the mindset and you're
Yeah.
in it, once you leave, it's hard to really get back into that. And so that mentality
Uh,
structure kind of leaves
they
once you
wear
get
you out a
into
little.
civilian. Yeah, like that civilian world is different than, than the military world. So it's harder to keep up that standard because it is a standard, that they want to ensure that the military have and the soldiers have,
You
um,
mean from like a fitness perspective or?
both mentally and physically.
Oh, okay.
That what you never forget what you get taught, but implementing that in the civilian world is totally different. So like for
Makes
me,
sense.
like the awareness part of what the military taught me, I there's nothing compared to that awareness part. And I was able to implement that within my jobs, my career, when I got out. So it was a little bit easier transition for me. But
Yeah.
it does go by the wayside if you're not actively, doing it, thinking about it, in it anymore. So yeah, it is a challenge, I think, for some vets.
That way, I think you might, general fitness is a challenge for everybody, it feels
Mm,
like,
yeah,
or at least, the majority of people. The
yeah.
majority of people seem to hit an age where it's like, I think I'm done with the weights and the running and that kind of, you know what I mean? It does
Hmm.
seem like that. Less now, but, you know,
Yeah, yeah. It's hard.
but then again, we are more obese than ever before, so maybe not less now. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, the military is struggling just to get recruits in right
Yeah,
now
that's crazy. I know. I've
because they
read
can't
about
make
that.
weight. They can't pass the PT test. They've downgraded the PT test so much because of it.
Yeah. Well, we
So
underestimated the laying of the base of strength as a kid.
yeah,
You know, we
for
really did
sure.
underestimate how your muscles and bones develop when you play outside compared to stay inside.
Yeah,
And it could, just sunlight itself could play a huge role in how brittle people are
yeah.
and
I think
malnutrition.
yeah.
It's
I
it's
think
a
that
it's
plays
a
a
very different world.
think that plays a big part in what we were talking about earlier with young boys just doing the thing. They're in front of the screen all day. Video
Yeah,
games,
sure.
TV, food everywhere. It's on demand right now. Like
Oh
when we were
yeah,
younger, food wasn't really on demand like that. We
yeah,
had Domino's, okay. You walk,
sure. Yeah, yeah,
a mile, but food is on demand. You can get that in 10 minutes, while
yeah.
playing a
Oh,
video
for
game.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so the issues
And
that we
it's
see
not
with
easy.
yeah,
It's a
it's not.
battle. It's a battle. Even
It
yeah, yeah,
is.
I'm sure to some degree you'll run into it as a dad, but it's a battle.
Mm-hmm.
I find the best thing to do with kids is to help them understand the difference between those two worlds,
Hmm.
and to make sure they know that it's really hard, though not impossible, which makes it even more difficult. It's really hard to reach your full potential in there,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's not as easy as the digital world with kids is not as easy as take it away. Don't let them ever
Right.
see it. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not. I know a lot of parents, they start that way young, and
Right.
I've watched many of them fall,
Yeah.
Um and I try to look at it through my kids' perspective, Darius, and
Hmm.
I'd have been lost, man.
Mm.
I'd have never came out. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Because it's so immersive.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly immersive, and it's so wild that you can. I mean, we used to build with Legos,
Yeah.
and we build some cool stuff with Legos, and be like, "Man, mom, look what I built."
Right.
These kids can put a VR headset on and build a world,
Yeah.
and
A whole
walk through
city.
it, and then
Hmm.
they can call their friends up and be like, "Dude, come hang out in my world."
Hmm.
Like,
Whole different
you
level.
don't want to take that from a kid. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's a
Right.
bad move. But you have to have constant conversations with them and be like, so let's look at that screen time, dude. What's going on
Hmm.
with that? Let's get that cut down a little bit, and
Yeah.
explain to them that, um, when you're bored and when you're off that thing is when the real gains are going to happen.
Hmm.
If you're distracted constantly, then you'll just be distracted constantly, and that's
Yeah.
that's the battle that they'll fight.
There's there's always this area that comes up of being competitive in a world that doesn't stop for you, right? So there was there's multiple statistics, but there was one that came out recently saying how other countries, I'm not going to name them, but other countries, their men or their population in general are ahead of us in educational system, physical fitness, the military recruitment. And I look at America and I'm saying, where are we going wrong? Is it the food? Is it not being outside playing enough for kids? Is it educational system? Where are we falling behind these other countries where we're not going to be ready for a conflict? Now, granted, there are drones. We are in a video game aged world where
Yeah,
we can just drop, bombs on
yeah,
people. But still, that sense of readiness that America's ready, we're ready as a community, as a country. Where are we going wrong here? That's always been a thought in
yeah.
my head.
Well, it's an all of the above situation. And I think and this is hard for parents to hear, but I think what, parents have to remember is you can instill stuff in your kids, and hopefully you instill the important stuff in them early. But the majority of their life is going to be without you,
Hmm.
and I didn't change until I was gone from my parents.
Right.
My mother was Susie Homemaker, dude. She did
Mm.
everything for me. The first
Yeah.
load of laundry I ever did was in the apartment I moved into my girlfriend, now wife, with,
Yeah.
19 or something like that. First time I ever used a washing machine. So they didn't instill in me this idea of, work ethic and that kind of stuff. Well, maybe work ethic. Yeah, they were workers, but when the real change happens, I think in people is it's 20 and on.
Hmm.
It's not like you hit 18 and you're like, dude, my parents hooked. I got everything figured out. They
Yeah.
set me up. You know what I mean? But they are up against it. And you gotta play that game where you know when to step in and know when to let them experience it. And you also got to understand the kid that you're dealing with. Are you
Right.
dealing with the type of kid who you can say, dude, if you do this, these things are going to happen, and him go, I got it, Roger? Or
Hmm.
are you dealing with a kid who you have to say, yeah, go touch the fire again, dude. I mean,
Right.
just go touch it and burn yourself, and
Yeah.
then you'll go, okay, I'm not going to touch the fire anymore. Because
Yeah.
I have two kids who are like that. My oldest son is the type of guy. A lot of things you can say, you don't want to go down that path. That's going to be bad, and he'll be like, okay, and get it. And then my youngest son, he's like, I got to smash my head in, or
Right.
else I might not get it.
Yeah.
So it's
Nah.
it's way more nuanced. Again, everything is so nuanced, and with the age
Mhm.
of like YouTube shorts and quick content, we
Right.
really do everybody a disservice by being like, if you want to be successful in business, you need to do
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. If you want to
Yeah.
be a good parent, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Everything is nuanced. You
Yeah.
you want to spend time with them and get to know, because that's the only way you can manage them.
Sure. For sure. I want to pivot a little bit straight into this headline came up yesterday, and I was like, I need to talk about this. But I was like, well, let me just talk about it with you. Russia and their
in the
ships.
Caribbean,
Yeah, yeah. Give me
off the
something.
coast of Florida.
Give me something. Give me something where I can comprehend what they're up to.
Uh, well,
Because
it's an insane. There's a bunch of parts of me in this thing, and one part of me is Ronald Reagan esque, kind of like
ah,
it, the weakness of the United States at a time like this to even consider allowing that to happen is real. That really hurts sort of the younger
right.
me who really grew up believing this nation was great and powerful and stood against evil,
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and maybe that's because you have a less nuanced view of world events too. But
Hmm.
it does certainly seem like a phone call from a president to a president should be made in a very aggressive way with very severe consequences unless you get those ships the hell away from my coastline. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I mean that just seems like the appropriate action.
yeah.
Um, but outside of that, I think Russia's doing what they're running as far up to the line as they possibly can,
Hmm.
you know. Now, of course, they could retreat and get the hell out of there and be done with it.
Yeah,
Um, but that is not going to happen. They wouldn't take what they've taken thus far if they had any plans of leaving without the
right,
land that they've taken. So they're playing the game, man. I mean, it looks very much like a chess match to me, but it's one that I don't think either team really wants to win.
right.
You know what I mean? So it's just this is the best that we can do as
Hmm.
Russia. The best that we can do is try to scare somebody by putting some things in waters that we can get into without really triggering
Hmm.
the decimation of whatever craft we send over there because they have nothing, in the water that could stand up to anything we have in
Right.
Norfolk, Virginia that could be down there and
Hmm.
destroy that whole operation. So, they're just playing the game.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any legitimate threat from any of it at all.
Hmm.
I just think it's just what it is. It's like you as a leader, you have to do something.
Hmm.
You can't have the whole of Europe. The week before this happened, the whole of Europe was like, should we let the Ukrainians strike inside of Russia? Should we let them use
Yeah.
Western weapons inside Russia? Yeah, we should. We should do
Right,
that. You
right.
know what? Go ahead. And then they did it. So as Russia, you can't just be like, oh, I
Yeah,
guess I'll just sit
that's
idly
it.
by. You have to do something.
Hmm.
And Putin's been in the reactive stage, like aside from the actual war, every
Right.
other thing he's been in the reactive stage dealing with NATO, And the question is for me, the scariest question for me is what lengths are NATO willing to go to stop this?
Hmm.
Because they don't seem willing to back down either, you know. I mean, I don't know if you heard the story. What was much more scarier to me was the story about a week ago, maybe a week and a half, that they didn't necessarily say Ukraine took it out, but Russia's early warning nuclear systems have been destroyed. Two of them now.
Mm.
Two of their nuclear early warning systems have been destroyed.
Mm.
So that's either a brilliant chess move or something really scary. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
So,
I'm on the grand scheme of things, at least here in America, how war can change not only the political structure, but just everyday life of people's, you know, going to work, going to
yeah,
school,
we're
going to
unaware
the
of it.
bank, you know,
Yeah.
going to the gas station. What does that look like in a world where we're in World War III? Not to hype it up, but it could be around the corner. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but
I think
how
a
that structure
healthy
changes.
I think a healthy mentality for people if they're willing to be prepping. If you want to live out in perpetual peace land, that's okay. I mean, it's going to be harder for you if something goes wrong.
Right.
But you live in America, you're blessed with that. And there's a good chance you could stay that way for a while. Um, you know, peace in the sense that there's not nuclear bombs going off and things like that.
Hmm.
What's most unnerving about everything is the cyber threat. And I think that the greatest damage that we would see, barring nuclear, is the grid taken down by cyber attack. The water systems, the power grids, the
Yeah.
medical systems have all already been infiltrated.
Right.
So what I like to tell people is just, as we get closer and closer to war and America at war, just use the mantra of war equals off grid. War
Yeah.
equals off grid.
Right.
If America is locked up in a war, the power grid will be targeted. And
Hmm.
then your life changes dramatically. No more water, no more power. How does that look for you and your family? What do you have to do now to be prepared to have water, food, and lights and heat and the ability to stay cool? All those things that we take completely for granted. Because in my mind, real war equals a life forced off grid because of the cyber attacks. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, because these things the everyday person's not aware of. If the power goes out and you're in the middle of traffic and you're wondering why nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
That happens in movies all the time, right? So, um, and or your home where the power just goes out and it doesn't come back on, and
Yeah.
that's it. So, yeah, I mean, that's a reality that we are faced with possibly in the near future. Who knows? Either country, and we know the two that were the major ones that we're talking about here, could pull something off like that.
Yeah.
And then
We
we're
know Iran's dying to do some too, and
right.
they're hacking as
Yeah.
well. They're
Yeah.
in the conversation of cyber warfare with us.
Yeah.
And the longer this thing in Israel goes, it feels like the more they want to do something to us. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And that's really what a lot of people do this stuff for.
Right. Yeah.
The line that the line that you don't need a weapon of war because we have a national guard and a military and a police force. It's
Yeah.
you're going to be alone,
Right.
or you're going to be with the people on your block. Fundamentally, that's the reality of it.
Hmm.
Whatever that looks like for you, hopefully that looks good.
Yeah.
But that's largely what the reality of a partial collapse or emergency or disaster is going to look like. It's going to be a bunch of people wandering up and down the street going, "What happened? What should we do next?" You know,
Yeah. Gotta figure it out. No,
that's
that's
it.
good. I think this is a good place to stop because we can go on into
Oh, I'll talk
that
forever, man. You
world.
got to shut
Yeah.
me up for sure.
But no, I appreciate you, James, for coming on Preparedness Talk, and give the people where you're at, websites, social.
Oh yeah, sure. So we have a 15 host podcast network called the Prepper Broadcasting Network, and prepperbroadcasting.com is where that all the podcasts reside. But you can get them on iTunes, whatever you listen to, just search Prepper Broadcasting Network and you'll find us. We do like a show or two every single day of the week. We probably do more than you could ever listen to. So, but there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of different takes in the prepping world. And like I said, we set ourselves up to sustain ourselves. And the way we do that is through our membership. That's at pbnfamily.com. Check that website out. It's another tidal wave of information. So, if you feel compelled, come join us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you, and hopefully this is the last time we get on here and talk about current events and things that are going on. But yeah, we should have a part two.
Oh, I'm in, man.
Sure. And
Just shout at me. I'll be there.
yeah, yeah. But hey,
And I want to
guys.
bring you on too.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll do it. But this is Preparedness Talk. You guys be safe, be healthy, and stay blessed.